When Eddie Van Halen was battling cancer, almost nobody knew how bad things really were. Even close friends had no idea. That's how Eddie wanted it. His son, Wolfgang Van Halen, was the only one who saw the full picture. And for years, he kept it all inside. To the world, Eddie still seemed like a guitar god, invincible, untouchable, full of life. But behind the scenes, he was fighting one of the hardest battles of his life, and not just physically. Wolfgang has finally started to open up about those painful last days, and what he says changes everything we thought we knew about the final chapter of Eddie Van Halen. It wasn't just about a man losing a fight with cancer. It was about a father trying to protect his son. It was about music, silence, regret, and love. And it all started long before Eddie took his final breath. Back in 2019, when Van Halen hadn't been seen in public for a while, rumors started to swirl. Some said he was planning a reunion tour. Others said he had quit music for good. But inside Eddie's home, the truth was clear. His health was declining fast. He had already battled cancer before, and now it was back, harder than ever. Still, he smiled through it. Wolfgang remembers seeing his father in pain, but still cracking jokes, still playing the guitar, still pretending everything was okay. He never wanted to worry anyone, Wolfgang once said in an interview. Even when he was at his worst, he was more concerned about how I was doing. That's the kind of man Eddie was. A rock legend who could light up a stadium, but still cared more about his son than anything else. But there was one thing he couldn't control: the silence from his old bandmates, and the reunion that never happened. That's where the pain really started. And it's what Wolfgang finally talked about after years of holding it back. Because before Eddie died, something happened. Something Wolfgang still can't forget. The phone that never rang. As Eddie's health continued to decline, Wolfgang hoped for one thing: a final Van Halen reunion. Not for the fans, not even for the fame. He wanted it for his dad. He wanted his father to feel that love one more time, to be surrounded by the band he helped create, to hear that crowd one last time, to feel whole. But that call never came. The reunion, which was rumored for years, stayed just that: a rumor. Eddie's old bandmates didn't show up, and slowly, the dream faded. Wolfgang said he tried to help make it happen. There were talks, ideas, even excitement. David Lee Roth was on board. So was Alex Van Halen. Even Michael Anthony had started speaking with Wolf again. It could have been magical, but the clock was ticking, and Eddie was running out of time. Behind closed doors, Wolfgang watched his dad get weaker. Sometimes Eddie couldn't even hold the guitar. Other times, he'd get a sudden burst of energy and start playing like nothing was wrong. But the music was quieter now. Wolf knew it wasn't just about the cancer, it was the disappointment. The reunion meant something deeply personal to Eddie. He didn't need the spotlight, but he needed the closure. And he never got it. Wolfgang later revealed there was a plan, a real one. It was going to be a celebration of the band, of Dad's legacy, but life had other plans. As the weeks passed, the hope died out. Eddie stopped asking about the tour. He stopped talking about the stage. He started asking different questions. Are you going to be okay? That was the moment Wolfgang knew his dad was letting go. He wasn't just preparing for death. He was preparing his son to keep living without him. But before the end came, Eddie had one last gift to give Wolfgang, and no one, not even fans, expected what it was. The secret song he left behind. In the final weeks of Eddie's life, when his body was weak and his energy was low, he still had one thing left: music. He couldn't tour, he couldn't rehearse, but he could still record in short bursts. And in a quiet moment, Eddie played something just for Wolfgang. It wasn't a Van Halen song. It wasn't a showy guitar solo. It was something softer, something personal. Wolfgang called it the most emotional thing he ever recorded. To this day, he hasn't released it. He says it's too personal, too raw. It wasn't meant for the charts or the fans. It was meant for him. Wolf later said, "It's like a goodbye letter in sound." That's when the world finally understood. Eddie didn't just leave behind albums or guitars. He left behind a part of himself in the music he gave to his son. That music, that moment, became a guiding light for Wolfgang. When Eddie passed away on October 6, 2020, the world mourned a legend. But Wolfgang lost his father, his hero, his best friend. And that pain became the heartbeat of something new. Wolfgang wasn't planning to step into his father's shoes, but Eddie had already told him, "Find your own voice." And that's exactly what he did. But not everyone believed in him. In fact, some even accused him of using his dad's name to get famous. Wolfgang had to face more than grief. He had to face judgment. And what he did next shocked everyone. He wasn't ready, but he did it. Anyway, after Eddie Van Halen passed, the world waited to see what his son would do next. Wolfgang was only 29 years old. He had just lost the most important person in his life. The idea of making music without his dad by his side felt impossible. He wasn't ready. Not emotionally, not mentally, not even physically. But something inside him kept pushing. Eddie had always told Wolfgang, "Don't be me, be you." Those words echoed louder than ever. People expect Eddie to join Van Halen, to carry on the band. But Wolfgang made a decision no one saw coming. He would start his own project from scratch. No famous band name, no help from old members, just himself. He called it Mammoth WVH, a tribute to one of Van Halen's original names, Mammoth. But this time, it was his band, no one else. He played every instrument, he wrote every lyric, he recorded every note, alone, and behind every song was grief. His debut single, Distance, wasn't just a song, it was a letter to his father. When the music video dropped, fans were shocked. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't loud, it was heartbreaking. Home videos of Wolfgang and Eddie filled the screen, playing, laughing, hugging, and the final clip showed Eddie leaving a voicemail. "I'm so proud of you. I love you." That one message broke millions of hearts, but not everyone was kind. Some critics said he was riding on his dad's fame. Others said, "You'll never be Eddie." Wolfgang didn't lash out. He didn't argue. He just kept going. And then came the Grammy nomination. Not for Van Halen, not for a band, for Wolfgang. He stood on that stage, knowing Eddie would have been proud. But behind the scenes, one thing still haunted him. The silence from someone he expected support from. Someone very close to Eddie. Someone who had disappeared. The family that vanished. After Eddie's death, the music world reached out to Wolfgang. Fans, fellow musicians, even legends showed love and support. But one person didn't, and Wolfgang noticed. It was Eddie's own brother, Alex Van Halen, the man who had played drums beside Eddie for decades, the man who built the Van Halen empire with him, the man who was family. But after the funeral, Alex vanished from Wolfgang's life. No calls, no messages, nothing. Wolfgang later said in interviews, "I don't really have a relationship with Alex anymore." That shocked fans everywhere. How could the last two members of the Van Halen family drift apart like that? Wolfgang never gave full details. He was respectful, quiet, careful. But now, Wolfgang was on his own. No Van Halen band, no uncle, just the weight of a name that meant everything, and sometimes too much. So what did he do? He kept playing, he kept touring, he kept telling the truth. But then came the question that shook him. Would he ever play a Van Halen song on stage? Fans begged for it. Every concert they shouted for Eruption or Panama. But Wolfgang said no, and his reason left the audience stunned.